about how sports shape the skills that we learn without us even realizing that that they're being shaped. So I thought it'd be really interesting to discuss how tennis for me as a sport I played from the age of 11 shaped various different skills that I now use in the workplace, and looking at it in even in the environment context, how the different environments in which I played tennis led to me developing these skills. So that's what I thought I would discuss today. Bit of a background and an outline to how this presentation is going to go. I'm just going to just quickly discuss my background in tennis because it's not very interesting. I want to talk about what I learned from playing and also watching tennis. I want to talk about the environmental aspect of playing a sport in a variety of places, some being uncomfortable, some being really friendly environments. And then I also wanted to have a group discussion on what sports we played growing up, or team events, or any other kind of activity, what skills we thought we developed from those that we didn't even probably realizing we were developing at the time, and then how we now use those in the workplace. And I thought that could be an interesting sort of discussion to have. So a little bit of background, that's me playing when I was 16. It's a very bad photo, but I started playing tennis at the age of 11 and I started coaching at the age of 16. I got my first coaching qualification then. I played at a local club to me about 4 to 5 times a week from the age of 13 to 18. And then I continued to play every now and then when I was at university, but not as much because I was hungover quite a lot of the time. My time as a competitive player, where I played league matches, also county level tennis, taught me a lot, not just about myself, but also how to approach various aspects in life. And these different skills are what I want to touch on today. So the first main skill that playing tennis taught me that I think is important when going into the workplace is independence and self-motivation. Now we know tennis is by itself a individual sport. You play by yourself, therefore when you are on the court, only you are responsible for the outcome of how you play. You can play poorly, you can play badly, but there's no one else to blame. And that is a really important aspect, I think, that we don't always acknowledge. When you are doing work, normally you are responsible for the outcome of that work. If you don't put the work in, you're not going to get the result. And I think that was an important skill that I learned very early on in life. Another one is that if you're losing, you have to find the solution by yourself. You can't hope that a teammate might score or a teammate might bail you out. If you're losing, you have to find a solution. You have to work out how you can win. And I think that's really important as well. If you're in the working environment and you're realizing that what you're doing isn't working, or you're not getting your point of view across, you can't just sit there and continue to try the same things. You have to then come up with a solution of how you can make yourself a better person and a better teammate to others. Finally, for this little section, I wanted to talk about how if you're playing doubles in tennis, which is a little bit different, but you have to have the self-motivation that your actions impact the team. Therefore, you can't solely be the person that lets everyone down. It's a little bit of a contradiction, but if you play doubles, it's important to acknowledge your actions dictate what happens to the team, not just you. So therefore, if you're not acting properly in your own little part of the game, then that negatively impacts on your teammate. And I think that works both in this context and also in the work context. And these are all things that I learned at quite a young age playing tennis that I sort of innately took to every different outcome, to every different aspect. Another thing that you learn is patience. Now, sorry for the quality of the picture. It took me a long time to find one like this. But tennis is a game of patience. It's long, it's methodical. The longest tennis match I ever played was 4.5 hours long. It was incredibly tiring and incredibly stressful. But what you do learn from having that is that you have to be patient. You can't win a tennis match very quickly unless you are incredibly good and your opponent's not very good. But you learn that the quickest course of action does not always lead to success. You can't always try and go for the big winner, the big shot, the big Hollywood shot, as we used to call it, because that doesn't always lead to success. And I think that's important as well in the work context. You can't always just go out and do the best project you've ever done. You can't always just land the best client. You have to methodically build your way up and build your how you attack every different aspect of your working environment. And I think that was a crucial idea to learn at a young age. I think another one is that you learn to get better and to improve on your own weaknesses. You need to have that patience. It took me 4 years to become an actually adequate tennis player in the sense that I could do what I wanted on the tennis court all the time, and I felt like I had control of how I was playing. And that took a lot of time and a lot of patience. And I thought, using that, it's important to take that into the workplace. And an example being, when Adina talks about learning a language, you don't just learn a language in a week. It takes years to learn a language, and you have to do it through patient learning and doing it in an environment where you don't even realize that what you're doing is building on your weaknesses. You're just doing it in a way that you're allowing yourself to slowly develop. The final aspect for patience is that it also allows you to understand how short-term successes can contribute to long-term successes. If you are aware that doing one small task helps you build onto another small task that helps you build onto another small task, but all of those tasks together help bring long-term success, then I think that's another crucial aspect to learn. And it was one thing that I learned playing tennis at a young age. You win a point, you win a point, you win a point, and then finally you win another point, you win a game. And then that game helps you win the set, and that set helps you win the match. All of those short-term goals help you eventually get to the ultimate goal, which is winning the match. And you can apply that to the workplace. The next one aspect I wanted to talk about is that of communication. So tennis really improved my communication skills, especially when I was a coach. So I used to coach from the age of 16 to 18 kids between the ages of 4 and 11. Trust me, you don't want to coach kids the age of 4 how to play tennis, because most of them see the ball and they just want to hit it as hard as they can. It's incredibly tiring. But I learned how to make the skills that I had learned more accessible to other members of the club that I played for. And I think this was a really important feature for me, because not only did it allow me to give back, but it also let me understand what I was doing in a different way. And I think that you can also apply to the workplace and to life as well. If you are introspective for a moment and you look back and you decide, oh, that's how I did this, and then relay that to somebody else, it allows you to understand how far you've come. And then you can then apply that to a lot of different contexts. So let's say you're in the workplace, you couldn't do something for a long time, you finally figure out how to do it, and then when you're explaining to another member of staff how to do it, you realize how far you've come in that sense. And I thought that was really important. Communication through tennis also improved my ability to work as part of a team. So especially in doubles, doubles games can be very hectic. You don't often get a lot of time to react to stuff, and you have to be in constant communication with your partner, if that's talking about what you're planning on doing, or during the middle of the point yelling out who's going to play the shots. So it helps you work as part of a team in a very competitive environment, which then you can then break down and place into a lot of different contexts, especially in the workplace, where let's say you're in a meeting and you and a team member are trying to get your project put forward as opposed to perhaps another project. You then know how to balance both of your ideas off of each other and present that to whoever you want to. So those are the skills in regard to communication that I learned through playing tennis. And then finally, the final skill aspect that I wanted to touch on was motivation. And I got this through watching the French Open final yesterday, because it really motivated me to discuss this, and because of this man, Nadal, for winning his 20th Grand Slam. I wanted to look at how tennis as a sport impacted my ability to understand what motivation was, and then how I understood what motivation was in every aspect of my life moving forward. When you're losing, the only one to get you going is yourself. You're the only one that can motivate you. You have to understand that if you're not succeeding, it's down to you. Therefore, the only person that can get you to get going and winning again is yourself. I think that's an important feature that I learned at a young age, and therefore can be applied across the workplace and in various aspects of life. And then building on that, when you're especially in a challenging environment, that's when it becomes even more heightened, and you have to find the will to win. And that will to win is not necessarily that phrase, the will to win, but you can then push that out to find success, or find a way to cope, or a way to I'm not sure, to be a bit more yourself in a context or an environment that you find uncomfortable. So let's say you're in a new workplace, or a new a new job, and you don't particularly like the environment, but you know that you are the only one that has to get that motivation to try and succeed, because that will help you feel more comfortable. So that's I think the final skill I wanted to touch on, just give a little bit more of an environmental context to why I think tennis as a skill or as a sport is actually quite compatible with this, is that there's many different environments that you can play as a tennis player, especially growing up. There's lots of different clubs, lots of different surfaces, lots of different. I've been played tennis in different countries, so the way in which you have to use these skills that I've touched on in a variety of contexts helps the ways in which you can then apply them to other aspects of life. So just to give you a little bit of context, these are some of the different clubs that I've played at personally. You can see how different they all look, the various contexts they were in. So the top left is in a tennis club in Spain where I went for a training camp. The top right is a club I played at all the time against competitive players from another club that we had a rivalry with. The bottom left is a club where I got into a disagreement with an adult whilst I was playing men's league at the age of 16, where it didn't get physical, but we got into an altercation. And the bottom right is the university club that I played at, where I spent a little bit of time when I was hungover playing tennis with my some of my housemates. So each one of these different environments taught me a different aspect of the game, a different aspect of how I used my skills that I developed as growing up playing tennis, and in each context I had to apply them in a different way. So the top left, I had to apply my motivation to succeed because we were in a grueling training camp where we did lots of fitness, lots of running, and then we would play tennis for 2 to 3 hours. And if I didn't try to motivate myself every day to go out and do well, I would have been dead. I would have really, really struggled. So I think that was an important aspect. And then I took that back to when I was doing my A levels, and I used that motivation that I had then to then motivate me in other areas of life. The competitiveness in the second picture, didn't like the people that played for this club. We had a bit of a rivalry because we were competing for a local league division. But whenever I went there, I always had that competitive fight within me to always want to improve. And every time I went back, I wanted to make sure that I was competing at the level that these players were at, because they were obviously going to improve. Therefore, we had to improve as well. So it was that methodical improvement over the course of the rivalry of about 3 or 4 years that I then applied to other aspects of life, knowing, oh, over these 3 years, we've both gotten better, but I wonder what else I could get better at over the course of 3, 4 years. I'll save you the story of the bottom left one, but basically called a shot that a guy thought was in, that I said was out. I had to use my communication skills in this context, understand that, yes, he's angry, he didn't see the ball land the way that I saw it, but I then have to use the skills that I've developed talking to children and to the young adults that I've coached in order to diffuse the situation. And that was, I think, an important little lesson that I learned, because you can then apply that to the workplace. You can say, oh, there's going to be a problem here, there's going to be some sort of conflict here. Let me use the skills in communications that I've learned to diffuse any potential conflict that we might have. And then the bottom right, I've just included that because to me, that's one of my favorite courts, and I used to play there all the time when I was at university. So this just is a little sum up of how I think playing in different environments helped me, and how it helped me apply different skills to different contexts. So playing at various clubs often meant I was in an uncomfortable environment. Some clubs weren't particularly friendly. They did that as an intimidation tactic because they didn't want you to succeed there, because they wanted their players to win. And this caused me to have a heightened sense of what was happening and the skills that I was developing to probably develop quicker as a result. As Adina's noted before, spending lots of time in nature or just being around nature really helps with how you develop and how you learn. And because most clubs are situated in parks, or some are even by the sea, I think you learned quicker because you're in an environment that was sometimes not friendly, but you're also in a more picturesque context, and I think that did help with learning. And the bottom one is also just a build on that, meaning that unfamiliar opponents, often sometimes playing people who are much older and much better than me, caused me to develop my skills faster because I had to adapt. And I think you can then apply that to the workplace. If you're with people that you think are better at the job than you then try and catch up with them, and you adapt in order to match them. And I think that's an important feature that I learned at that young age. So just a few takeaways. That's basically the context. I just wanted to discuss that because I thought I played tennis yesterday morning and then watched tennis, and I thought, you know what, it'd be really interesting to discuss